have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum, welcoming.
I'm Chris Cooper, in for Ann Northrup. And at first I thought I would not be able to fill in, but then it turns out I would be able to fill in, if you get the difference between would and wouldn't.
Good to see you, Chris. Good to have you back.
Thank you. Well, here on Nelson Mandela's 100th birthday as we tape.
Okay. Well, let's get into the headlines this week. Well, of course, Chris is referring to all the nonsense over in Helsinki. And the Human Rights Campaign there sent a message to Trump and Putin in Helsinki.
Meanwhile, back here in the States, House Republicans voted to allow LGBT discrimination or anti-LGBTQ discrimination by adoption agencies or have your federal funding cut.
But a federal judge ruled for the first time that it's legal for a city to ban anti-LGBT discrimination at adoption. Have you got all that? We'll explain it later.
Meanwhile, Israel is not going to extend surrogacy protections or allow surrogacy for gay and lesbian couples, for same-sex couples.
And there was a protest.
Big protest.
We're going to report some progress. You know, there's not much progress to report, but there is progress in India and Lebanon and the Episcopal Church.
And Andy, you should do the next headline because you're a crusader for this film.
Well, I haven't actually seen it. I'm familiar with his story. The documentary about Scotty Bowers, who set Hollywood stars up with same-sex dates since like the 1940s, and he's still alive, is opening in Los Angeles and New York.
And on the small screen, there's a lesbian superhero character who may be getting her own TV series, so that's something else to watch out for.
So, proud to be an American? Since you haven't done the show in a while, let me catch up on what you've been thinking about and what you'd like to tell people about the state of our nation.
Well, you know, you don't have to be gay to be sort of upset, though we have more reasons than most to be upset. You don't even have to be American to be upset about what's going on, because I mean, I think the whole world is sort of really deeply concerned about what's been going on. But the one thing I realized when I was at a dinner party just on Monday, and I ran into this friend of mine, and I said, "How are you?" You know, just generic, "How are you?" And he's like, I guess I'm good, yeah, I'm okay. And I'm like, well, why are you so non-committal? And he said, well, because of everything that's going on in the world. And he started to go into it. And, you know, he works in a liberal think tank, so he metabolizes all this stuff. And I'm like, stop. You can't live this. You can't internalize it. You've got to let it go. You know, you've got to fight it, of course. You've got to be concerned about it. But at some point, you've got to shunt it away out of your mind, out of your life, and you got to just live your life. And my thought is that we all it is our duty to thrive, all of us, to take care of ourselves, to take care of people in our circle and in our orbit, and make sure we are all doing extremely, extremely well so that we're in the best position to kick those persons' butts.
You have a very positive attitude, and I think you're absolutely right. Yes, I mean, it's very hard to not feel terrible about a lot of the things we've worked for all our lives crumbling around us, like you know, the establishment of the republic, for instance. But yes,
I know when we signed the Declaration of Independence, I thought that was it, that we were done.
But the Declaration says when things get terrible, you need to institute a new system, and that's what is on us now. Perhaps not just electing a new government, but establishing a whole new system of government that is not founded on slavery, for instance.
Well, and the other thing I remind myself about is the fact that we did not go through this exact same thing, but you and I are both old enough to remember living through the Reagan years. And those were pretty dreadful. That was AIDS crisis, that was Reagan, all happening at the same time.
Nobody gave a damn.
Thatcher across the pond, it was a terrible time. And we thought, you know, how can it get worse?
It's funny that people do feel this is worse. I think because
it is worse.
Because Trump is such a coarse, horrible bigot. Other presidents knew, including Reagan, to some extent, knew how to smooth things over while they were killing us. So
at least pay lip service to certain appearances.
Right. And we don't have that now. Don't forget what George W. Bush did in the Middle East in terms of upending the whole, region and killing all these people, and the Vietnam War and all those things, were awful. All right, but so we go back to the news. Welcome back.
Thank
all
you.
right, so let's talk about Trump's disgraceful trip overseas. It was nice to see in Britain that LGBT issues were on the agenda of a lot of the people who turned out to protest against him. That was much there. When they went to Helsinki, the Human Rights Campaign projected on buildings. Can we run that correct? Trump and Putin stop the crimes against humanity in Chechnya.
And the reason why they're bringing this up is because of the targeting specifically of gays and lesbians in Chechnya, and HRC, amongst others, have been pressing very forcefully for this to be raised as an issue in any sort of summit with Putin.
Well, of course, Trump and Putin didn't bring up any human rights issues, except when Chris Wallace was interviewing Putin, right? And he says, well, Mr. Putin, you have your enemies murdered and killed. And he brings all this up. And Putin goes, what about what you do to African Americans over there and the police? And it's not like he doesn't watch the news. He knows there's some state killing in America as well. So that's the way they left it. Interestingly, when Trump went up to Scotland to play golf, the Scottish First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, we have a picture of her. She said, I won't be able to meet with Trump. I'm the Grand Marshal of the Glasgow LGBT Pride March. She is the first, either Prime Minister or First Minister, she's the First Minister of Scotland, to march in a Pride March over there.
Which is when they're sitting in office, correct, which is pretty awesome. One side note to the whole Trump-Putin meeting, is that the New York Times published a cartoon that many considered homophobic, and I'm curious how you felt.
I watched it. It was an animation
Sure.
of the well, it wasn't even a bromance. It was the romance between Trump and Putin.
Right.
Were they playing on homophobia by showing them together?
See, I'm a little concerned about us being a little bit oversensitive, maybe. I don't know, because I look at like when there was a G7 meeting and Macron and French President Macron and Justin Trudeau, both of them relatively new to office, met for the first time. And there were all these pictures of them walking through this flower garden, practically hand in hand, looking longingly into each other's eyes. And everyone was, calling it like the bromance of the century. And it's
very European.
Was that homophobic? So if
that they were doing that, no. It was
no,
nice.
but that it was sort of ridiculed or parodied as sort of like a romance kind of thing.
I see.
Is that homophobic to do that? I didn't think so. I thought it was actually pretty funny.
Well, we do need to get to the bottom of what's going on with Trump and Putin. It was so nice to see Barack Obama this week at the Nelson Mandela centenary speech in South Africa. He deeply integrated LGBT rights issues into his speech in a very, kind of just great way, and it was very moving to listen to him. All right, how about that? Let's catch people up on Brett Kavanaugh, the Supreme Court nomination. Susan Collins, who's she and Murkowski are the two Republican quote-unquote moderates who could possibly stop this thing.
They're both senators. Susan Collins is from Maine.
Yes, and Murkowski is from Alaska. Collins this week said Democratic pressure on her won't work, so keep doing it, Maine. It's obviously getting to her. That's probably the only hope we have. We learned this week that Kavanaugh praised former Chief Justice William Rehnquist for his dissent in Roe v. Wade. What more evidence do you need? He praised Rehnquist's attempt to throw out the exclusionary rule that forbids police from using illegally obtained evidence. These were dissents that he was praising. And he also rejected the wall between the separation of church and state. He's a nightmare.
Well, there's the other thing you mentioned to me before we started taping, which was, come on.
Oh, that he is against the special counsel law.
Yes.
They have him on tape saying that.
Yeah.
and he thinks it's unconstitutional.
Which will come up for him to deal with.
So Chuck Schumer is asking that he recuse himself from anything related to the Mueller probe. And speaking of which, a friend of mine said that she heard this week that Trump won't fire Mueller and Rosenstein until Kavanaugh gets confirmed, because he doesn't want any distraction from that. And McConnell wants this all done by the first of Monday in October, which is when the court sits. All right, let's talk about adoption.
Okay. The House Appropriations Committee passed an amendment to the appropriations bill, which requires states to allow foster care agencies that they contract with to discriminate on the base of their sincerely held religious beliefs.
I'd call them severe religious beliefs.
Yes. I think they're synonymous in this case. And what happens as a result, if you don't allow this discrimination, if you require these foster care agencies to adhere to your non-discrimination laws, despite their religious beliefs, you can lose up to 15% of your federal funding for foster care. This is what the Republicans have attached to the bill. Now, will it survive? Will it become passed into law? It's got to get through first. It's got to pass the entire House, and then it's also have to pass the Senate.
And the conference that they have together.
Exactly, where things can be pulled out. And
attaching things to appropriations bills is a way that they do try to slip things through, and it would be terrible if that happened. However, in Philadelphia, a federal judge ruled that Philadelphia's law that requires adoption agencies, if you get government funds, you can't discriminate. I mean, that's usually the attachment to any service performed by a religious organization where they get government funds. Sure. You can get money from the government, but in the provision of services, you can't discriminate.
Which makes sense. It's federal money.
You don't have to take, well, it's not federal money in this case, it's city money from Philadelphia or state money. And so.
But I think the important point here is that this is a federal judge making this decision.
And it's the first time a federal judge has said that. However, if this kind of a case is appealed and Kavanaugh is sitting on the Supreme Court, good luck upholding that law. All right, a bunch of senators, Markey and the House, Joe Kennedy III, they've introduced a bill to ban the gay and trans panic defense. And by the way, that death row inmate, Robert Van Hook of Ohio, who at the last minute, he's been on the death row for like decades, at the last minute he said it was gay panic. That's why I did it. It was an outrageous Hail Mary pass, we call that, but he is scheduled to be executed today. I'm against the death penalty.
Meanwhile, in California, in a little tiny place called Dixon, California, the vice mayor wrote a column a week or two ago where he referred to gay men as fairies. F-A-R-I-E-S.
Like the fairy queen.
Well, even then it would be misspelled. And then he called for a straight pride American month. So this went viral and has caused quite a storm. There was a huge protest, and he is up for re-election. This guy's name is he's Vice Mayor Ted Hickman. And we'll see if he survives his re-election in November. He's 74, so, I don't like to be ageist, but, sometimes older folks have antediluvian views. Certainly not us older folks here at Gay USA.
No, I mean, open prejudice, we've discussed this again in the Trump era. The lid is off.
Yeah,
and
really
I don't know if you've experienced it, people just coming up to each other and yelling at each other over race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, all those kinds of things. Now, there was that in New York, there was that Uber driver who was suspended because two women were, he says, making out in the cab, and he said inappropriately. He said I would do it against them if they were a straight couple, he says, but they suspended him, and he's suing to get his license back from the Taxi and Limousine Commission. He's not suing Uber.
The cabbie's name is Ahmed El Boutari, and the two women involved, Alex Iovine, 26, and Emma Pickle, 24. And it's kind of hard to discern exactly where the truth may lie in this case,
People do all kinds of things in the backs of cars and cabs.
And the other question is this really a case where the two instances would have been treated the same?
Right.
Would this cab, and that's always the dividing line.
Right.
Is, are we being treated the same way as you would treat a heterosexual couple? So if they were snogging just as intimately as a heterosexual couple in the back, would he have kicked the heterosexual couple out of the
Yes, but if suppose you and I are just friends and we met and we get into the cab together and I say, hi, Chris, and I give you a kiss on the cheek, that could be enough to set somebody off if they're homophobic.
Right.
And that's the
So
problem.
it's really hard
we
to know
don't
what's
know.
going
We
on.
weren't there.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Meanwhile, the Williams Institute has done a study that found that transgender veterans are just as healthy as cisgender veterans. And so hats off to the Williams Institute, which does a lot of really, really great work providing us with the bona fide scientific legitimate studies that we can arm ourselves with when we go to court.
Yes, but the Veterans Administration, as we reported a couple of weeks ago, wants to stop medical treatment for a lot of transgender people, a lot of the needed medical treatment for people in the VA system. And you can go online to the VA, and we will include this in our email, how you can comment on this. I don't think they're going to listen to us, but as when we reported the story, I noted that they said that there's scientific evidence that this may not be effective, this treatment. Oh, now you're concerned about science. All right. Speaking of people out of hand, in Portland, Oregon, the police told a lesbian couple, Wendy and Trudy Dragoon, that were being harassed by their neighbors who were calling them all kinds of horrible names like, you gay pride ass bitch, you think you scare me, you're an effing woman, you're this. I mean, it was out of control. It's all on tape if you want to Google it. But the police said, well, those are just threats. Unless they do anything, we can't do anything, and there's no crime. And that's not entirely true. If you menace people.
Yeah, harassment.
So their neighbors, it was nice to see their neighbors chalking in rainbow the street in front of them that separates them from these horrible neighbors that just moved in who were so homophobic.
That's wonderful.
But on Long Island, a woman she's a lesbian activist out there. They only gave her name as Lauren on the news report. But a rainbow flag was stolen from her apartment in Long Beach, and the police are not treating it as a hate crime. They have a video of the guy with the rainbow flag dragging behind and throwing it in a dumpster.
And if I remember correctly, they haven't identified, even though they have
identified him.
They have identified
They've identified the guy.
Oh. There you go.
But that's what I mean by things getting out of hand. Now, Governor Bruce Rauner, the Republican of Illinois, tried to do something nice. He officiated at a same-sex wedding for one of his appointees, but he was doing it not really that publicly, but people take pictures at the wedding, and the right wing is very upset at you, Governor Rauner, who's up for re-election this year.
Well, meanwhile, transgender asylum seekers are running into problems, as you might imagine. A lot of them are coming here because they face so much violence and harassment in their home countries, and they think that it'll be better here. And maybe it will be, but unfortunately for 22-year-old Nicole Garcia, it wasn't. And she claimed she was sexually assaulted in detention when she crossed the border. She was being held in, I think, someplace called Cibola. The Cibola Detention Center in New Mexico.
And given all that we're spending on these detention centers to these private companies, it's outrageous that they can't at least make them safe.
Well, and this is one of the big concerns with the immigration crisis going on at the border, is that the most vulnerable people are the children who get ripped away from their parents and sent someplace else to live in cages, and trans people who are already trying to get away from horrible situations back home, and they walk into dicey situations up here, and they're vulnerable.
So I was very encouraged to read that in Irvine, California, and some other places, there's a network set up to aid LGBT migrants. A woman named Peggy Thompson gives trans women a temporary place to stay at her house. Once they get out of detention, they're lost. They don't know hardly where they are. She puts them up for a little while until they get their feet on the ground and helps them out. At the Los Angeles LGBT Center, they're providing legal help and social services for those seeking asylum. So there are these networks out there, and it's good that our people are a part of them. Right. Okay. In the couple of wedding stories, in the Mariana Islands, the U.S. Mariana.
So we're going international?
No, that's not international because it's a U.S. possession, right?
Good. Well, okay.
Well, that's how they got legal same-sex marriage.
That is. Okay. Well, continue. Tell them the point.
in Saipan, it's become a center for same-sex marriages, mainly for tourism from China, but also from Russia, Korea, and Bangladesh. However, if you're from out of town, they want to charge you $250 for a license instead of $130. But they're making a lot of money because of the 117 marriage licenses issued last year in Saipan, 90 were for same-sex weddings.
Which is awesome. That's like, what, almost 90% or 80%? And this is the same phenomenon we saw here in the States when only Massachusetts or only Vermont had domestic partnership or only Massachusetts had marriage. And as a result, they got the marriage tourism dollars.
Edie Windsor had to go to Toronto, I believe it was, to get married to Thea. Two of my best friends went to Springfield. There was this lawyer who had set up sort of a system where you could go up there and he'd take care of all the documentation and you'd get married, and you'd come back to New York and you would be married because New York wouldn't do it, but they would recognize it.
Thanks to Governor David Paterson. Then Governor David Paterson was the one who said, look, we may not do them here, but we will recognize marriages performed out of state. Now, that was the first brick in the wall to fall.
Yes.
And it was interesting because I remember going up to Albany to lobby for same-sex marriage with the state senators, along with Empire State Pride Agenda, our late lamented lobbying group here in New York. And my argument was every jurisdiction around New York, contiguous with us, except for Pennsylvania, Canada, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, all have same-sex marriage. Anybody wants to get married, all they have to do is hop a train. Right. And all you're doing is driving all that economic activity, all that wedding business out of our state. Right. And then when they come back here, they're still recognized as married. So what are you gaining? You're gaining absolutely nothing except driving economic activity. We made it about dollars and cents.
Well, and of course, the leader of the state Senate, who blocked that from going through for so long, eventually allowed it to go through under Governor Andrew Cuomo. But Dean Skelos was just convicted for the second time of corruption, he and his son. And maybe this time he'll go to jail. By the way, if you're thinking of doing it, conversion therapy is illegal in New York City. Completely. Not just for children, but for anybody. It is consumer fraud. That's the new law, and if anybody tries to do it to you, you can make a complaint.
There you go.
All right, and it was all, the wrestlers out in Ohio 20 years ago who say they were molested by the team doctor who's now dead. But the big issue, they're suing it now. But the big issue is, of course, Jim Jordan, the very right-wing congressman from there,
who
says
may potentially be up for Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Says he didn't know anything. But it was, he denies knowing. Let's see, I think all that is done. I was interested to read this story. I mean, there's a reason for bringing this up. There was a very nice feature story about San Diego and how the movement got very active there. We had Stonewall here in New York. They had a sting in May department stores in 1974 where the police were looking through a peephole in the restroom and watching people, and they were arresting men and mostly getting them to plead guilty to something. But there was one guy who stood up to the charge. He was Richard Nixon's former national campaign director, and he fought it, and he said, you didn't have a warrant to do this, and da-da-da-da-da, and he was acquitted along with a lot of other guys as a result of this. But it is what they were picketing the city, the newspapers who were publishing the names of these people, and they picketed the department store, and they stopped it. They stopped these stings.
And of course, this is anything but a thing of the past, even here in New York City, where not too long ago we had the people being entrapped in porn shops by undercover cops who would go up to 50-year-old guys and say, oh, you want to go
have a young guy go up to a 50-year-old.
Right.
Say, you want to have sex with me?
Right.
And you'd say, I wasn't thinking anybody was going to offer, but okay. And as you walked out, they'd say, the young guy would say, and I'll give you $50 to blow me.
And then
they would arrest you for going off with a prostitute.
Right.
It was so outrageous. Yeah. Robert Pinter helped bring that down by fighting it. It was very brave. But that was all done under Bloomberg. And it was done to try to close porn shops.
Yeah, but the point is, it's
run them out of business.
It's recent and it's here in New York City, so you don't have to go into the distant past of San Diego to find that kind of entrapment.
But a footnote to San Diego: they had their Pride Festival this weekend, and they saw a 72% increase in ticket sales. Ticket sales for the festival. It's their 45th, so they have a very deep and old movement there. But I think that's happening around the country. More people, more Pride events happening around the country, and more people turning out for them as part of the resistance.
Well, and we're also not as scary as we used to be. We're kind of mainstream now, so like people can bring their kids and their families, and I don't know how I necessarily feel about that completely.
Well, how do you feel about, are you going to come to the town meeting on July 31st, Tuesday?
I actually have Yankees tickets for that evening.
That's obviously more important. But Ann and I will be at the town meeting. Ann will be one of the presiders of Reclaim Pride. We're trying to, if you're all going to come, we hope, from around the world next June to the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall Rebellion. And for that, we don't want a commercial-laden parade.
I agree.
We want a civil rights march, and we want you to be a part of it. So come to the town hall meeting, July 31st, 7 p.m. I'll be there.
And speaking of people coming from around the world, are we ready to go international?
And I just want to mention another shout out to the people in Wisconsin. The Koch brothers are pouring more millions in dollars to defeat the out lesbian senator, the only out lesbian or gay senator, Tammy Baldwin. And so I hope you're all supporting Tammy out there. And the Episcopal Church, we didn't do that story. The Episcopal Church, when they voted to allow same-sex weddings, almost all the bishops said yes, 8 said no. So you couldn't do it in their dioceses. So they just passed a resolution at their triennial convention that says you
can get married within your own diocese, regardless of what your bishop feels.
Well,
are they bishops?
Yes. But the bishop might object. But if your local church wants to do it, an individual pastor or priest can still say, "I don't want to do it."
Right.
But that's the deal. So that's progress. Okay, international. Go ahead.
All right. Well, the big news, and we mean big, as in 1.3 billion people big, is India, where there was a ruling a couple of years back out of a court in Delhi that invalidated the sodomy laws in India. Everyone, all the gay people were ecstatic, and then it got appealed, and on appeal to the Indian Supreme Court, it got overturned. And suddenly they were back in shackles of sodomy. So now this is being reconsidered before the Indian Supreme Court, and it's actually, it looks really, really good for our side.
It was heard before a 5-judge panel, and they seem very sympathetic.
Yeah, the Chief Justice, Deepak Misra, basically indicated that the ban on gay sex may soon be gone. And the government, importantly, because the government is kind of right-wing in India right now, and they said, we're not going to touch this. We're going to leave it to the court to decide whether or not this is going to be repealed, as long as it's only the repeal of sodomy. If they try to go further and make a constitutional right to marriage or to adoption, then we're going to fight. But they're taking a hands-off approach to this. So, it's incremental steps, but if it goes through, Section 377 is the name of the law that criminalizes gay sex, a holdover from the British colonial days.
Half of the anti-sodomy laws in the world were imposed by the British in colonial rule.
18% of the world's population is in India. So this would be huge.
The world's largest democracy.
Second largest population on the planet, and if this goes through, it would be great. Now, the part that I especially like is that I have a little bit of an ancestral homeland connection to this decision.
How can that be?
Well,
are you Indian?
I am not Indian, but my mother's side of the family is from Trinidad and Tobago, and it turns out that the recent overturning of sodomy laws in Trinidad and Tobago may have played a big factor in the way the India case is going, because when they overturned the sodomy laws in Trinidad and Tobago, now mind you, there are folks who are appealing there, that overturning.
And that's quite a breakthrough in the Caribbean.
Oh, no, yeah. I mean, I've been to Trinidad and Tobago, and they're homophobic. They're not Jamaica-level homophobic, but they're homophobic. Trust me. So when they overturned the law in Trinidad and Tobago, they cited a privacy ruling from an Indian court. because they're all part of one big commonwealth. So they have similar legal systems, and they reflect each other's precedents to a certain extent. So by citing the Indian privacy law and overturning their sodomy laws, they kind of left India in a pickle, because now India was sort of like, well, we can't not cite our own privacy laws in considering sodomy. So that is believed to have helped spur this reconsideration, and perhaps, it's not decided yet, but perhaps make it possible.
Well, I'm going to see Peter Tatchell next week when I'm over in London, who has been, he is the UK big gay activist, human rights activist on many issues, and he's been pressing the government on the Commonwealth and how homophobic it is and all the anti-LGBT laws that they have.
Well, and that's one of the hopes, is that, it might be the Commonwealth falling like dominoes, because Trinidad and Tobago did it, then India does it, and then maybe some of the other
that's similar to what's happening in Latin America, or Latinx America, I guess we say now, because we've told you how the Inter-American Court of Human Rights ruled in a Costa Rican case that you got to do same-sex marriage, and then there are like 20 member nations that are supposed to do it as well. Yep. And the court indicated this week, when we said that you got to do marriage equality, we meant it. So stop effing around.
Yeah, basically they said, we have jurisdiction, this applies, get to it. So that was great. And meanwhile, more good news from places you wouldn't necessarily expect in Lebanon, in the Arab world.
Yeah.
They got a ruling that basically said that, again, repealing their sodomy laws. It basically they redefined homosexuality outside of their crimes against nature. They basically said, well, two consenting adults having sex in private is not a crime against nature. Right. And that's what our law is against, is crimes against nature. So it's still not quite settled.
But don't frighten the horses. Now this is true. This is what they're saying and what some other places are saying. If you want to do it behind closed doors. Malaysia did the same thing this week. They said, if you want to do it behind closed doors, the Islamic minister in Malaysia said, you want to do it behind closed doors, but I don't want to see it. And I don't want you to feel proud about it.
Well,
and that's what happened in Britain when they decriminalized buggery 50 years ago. They said you could do it in private. There could be no one else in the house. It had to be behind closed. There could only be two people in the house. You can do it. This was the great breakthrough of 50 years ago. But if you tried to just kiss a guy goodbye on the street in the 1980s, you could be arrested, and people were.
Well, this Lebanon ruling is a great breakthrough if it holds in the Arab world, and Lebanon is probably the most liberal of the Arab countries on this sort of thing, but it's hopefully a step in the right direction.
Belarus, not so liberal. A gay activist there was fined for holding up a poster in front of the Interior Ministry saying, "You are fake." And she was fined $185.
Wait, but you're not mentioning what she was fined for.
I'm going. Okay. You want to say it?
No. Go ahead.
She was protesting the ministry's online message, quote, "The LGBTI community and their struggle for rights are just fakes."
But you still haven't mentioned what she was fined for. She was fined for illegal assembly.
Well.
So, wait a minute, it was her holding up the sign and the person photographing her. And so they said this was an illegal assembly.
Well, they got that reporter from The Nation at the press conference for Putin and Trump out of there pretty quick, because he was holding up a sign because he wanted to ask a question about nuclear disarmament. Right? You saw that?
No, I did not see that.
They arrested him. All right.
Well, meanwhile, there are 74 countries in the world where homosexuality is still illegal, in case you think all this good news means...
It was illegal here in 13 states until 2003.
Well, yeah.
And they could come back, folks, with a new Supreme Court.
If you want to know which countries still have it illegal, you can go to the website 76crimes.com. And I should have given a chyron to the studio before we started, but anyway, it's pretty easy. The number 7, the number 6, crimes.com. You go to their website and you can see all the countries where homosexuality is still criminalized.
And I would urge you, if you live in a state that still has a law in the books against sodomy, New York got rid of its sodomy law under the Constitution, the state Constitution in 1980, but it was on the books well into the 90s. So we finally got rid of it in the legislature. But work on getting rid of those laws now. Just get them off the books. Same thing with your laws against same-sex marriage. Get them off the books so that if the court rules otherwise, we don't have to suffer. All right, other international news. Where are we here? Oh, well, let's go to Israel.
Okay.
In Tel Aviv, thousands were protesting. So the government expanded the surrogacy laws. It used to be only married couples, so they expanded it to single women, I think, right? But they wouldn't include gays in this reform. So there were thousands of gay people protested. We have that picture up there of the protest in Tel Aviv. Can we get that up on the maybe we don't.
They actually protested before the vote. There was a massive protest, and then when they lost the vote and there was no movement from the Knesset, there were people blocking the streets.
Okay.
You can see them. They just showed the picture of them blocking the streets. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
All right. In France, the Vatican. There's a French guy who was the Vatican expert on homosexuality. He's Monsignor Tony Anatrella. He's a psychotherapist. We have a pic. There he is. Hi, Tony.
And it turns out he would know because...
Well, he was very influential on policy. He taught that homosexuals are narcissists incapable of long-term relationships. That sounds like our president, a narcissist incapable of long-term relationships. Anyway, he told the bishops not to report sexual abuse to the civil authorities, and he has now been accused of abusing men during physical therapy sessions where he told them to live out their fantasies, and he only wore his socks. Oh my God.
Comfort is very important, Andy.
I mean, it just boggles the mind.
It might have been a sweltering day.
It boggles the mind. In Australia, a good story, there's a church called the Uniting Church. That's one of the biggest churches there, and they're going to allow same-sex weddings. The local church doesn't have to do it, but they can do it.
It's sort of like, well, no, I guess the Episcopal churches have to do it, but the individual priests don't have to do it.
Right.
So it's a little different.
Not so good for gay couples in Indonesia. You know, especially where Sharia law is in the Aceh province, they publicly whipped another gay couple. They said they were going to stop doing this.
86 caning strokes.
They said they were going to stop doing it because of an international outcry, but they obviously find it too much fun, so they did it.
Well, in happier news, you already talked about Nicola Sturgeon, the sitting First Minister of Scotland, leading the Pride March in Glasgow.
Yes.
Well, unfortunately, after that, they had a Pride event, a sort of, I guess, their big Pride gathering, and there was huge overselling.
In Glasgow.
In Glasgow. It was poorly organized, and hundreds of people were left who had bought tickets and were supposed to be admitted were locked out and couldn't go to the event. So it was a big controversy.
Why do you have to buy a ticket to celebrate Pride? I don't like that idea. I don't like it anywhere.
Well, I mean, it's sort of like the pier dance we have here after Pride. You can go to the Pride parade, but if you go to the pier dance, you got to buy a ticket. And in fact, I kind of experienced it this year when I was at the Pride dance because Kylie Minogue was performing, and I don't give rats whatever about Kylie Minogue, except I know she's an ally, so we like her. But, you know, all these gay men are like, Kylie! And they're rushing the stage, and I was like getting crushed. And it was horrible. It was horrible.
And you're fit.
And I'm fit. I basically had to try and squeeze my way out for my sanity. So, you know, apparently that's kind of what happened at this Glasgow party, and people couldn't go.
That's why they were requiring wristbands in New York, and there was no reason to do it in New York, and we fought it, and they did it in London too, wristbands. But they don't do that for most other events.
But you're talking about for the march, right?
No, yeah, for the march.
Yeah, but why do you need wristbands for the march?
You don't. And that's something we'll be taking up at Reclaim Pride. Something else that happened in the United Kingdom.
Reclaim Pride, July 31st.
July 31st, Tuesday night at 7 o'clock at the Centre. In the UK, Franklin Graham is headed over there, the son of Billy Graham, and he's even more right-wing than Billy, is headed over there for what do they call it, a mission, you know, where he's going to convert people. But the Blackpool transport buses have pulled his ads over his anti-Muslim and anti-LGBT views. Franklin Graham is also known for praising Putin's anti-gay laws in Russia, which is why you don't hear much pushback from Trump's base about Putin.
No, they love their anti-gay tendencies over there.
South Korea had their big 19th Queer Cultural Festival, and they had booths from 15 countries.
13 countries.
Well, including the United States.
Shockingly. The other nice thing is that it wasn't just the South Korean Queer Culture Festival. This year it was the Seoul, first time ever, it was the Seoul Queer Culture Festival. They branded it as Seoul, and they had to do that because so many other communities in South Korea now also have queer pride festivals, queer festivals, and that's really great news. They had great attendance. I think record attendance of about 120,000 people.
But I like what my country said, because I never hear it from the lips of the president. The U.S. Embassy issued a statement saying the United States remains committed to human rights and the fundamental freedoms of all persons. It's not true, but it was nice that they said it. 210,000 people.
It's aspirational.
210,000 people signed a petition against it. In Portugal, they approved a law to allow citizens to change their name and gender from the age of 16 without a medical report showing identity disruption, is what the phrase is. It's the 6th European country to do that: Denmark, Malta, Sweden, Ireland, Norway. The woman who pushed the bill said nobody needs a third party to know if they're a man or a woman.
Or a boy or a girl.
Or a boy or a girl. There
Nice.
you are. All right. In Canada, in Ontario, they canceled the sex ed curriculum because it was teaching kids about gender identity and
This is because as you explained to me, it's because they have a new conservative
premier,
Rob Ford.
Doug Ford.
Sorry, Rob Ford is the dead former mayor of Toronto.
Yes.
And this is his brother.
I think, yes.
Yes.
So now they're back to a sex ed curriculum that was last written in 1998. In Mexico, we were a little concerned about the new president. He's left-wing, but because he had to make a coalition with some right-wing parties, little ones. Well, they got so few votes that he doesn't have to have them in the cabinet or anything. Yes. So they're anti-gay and anti-abortion. And all right. So shall we move on to
AIDS news?
Yeah, sure.
All right. There is a big push on right now to get Truvada into an affordable form.
It's terrible. It's called PrEP. You know, this is pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's also a drug that people with AIDS take as well. And
there was an interesting...
Gilead charges in this country $1,600 a month for this drug.
And it,
a 25,000% markup over the generic.
Yeah, so
25,000%.
Apparently it costs $6 to manufacture a month's supply, and they charge $20,000 a year.
And who paid for the research to develop Truvada?
No, hold on. No, that's an interesting distinction. Because when I read that, I'm like, oh, okay, there's a distinction here. It's not the research to develop Truvada, though I'm sure we paid for a large part of that too, because there's always public money involved in this research. They said who paid for the research for Truvada to be used as PrEP.
Oh, okay.
So Truvada had already been developed, but now the trials to test Truvada as a pre-exposure prophylaxis, that was paid for almost entirely by the public and a couple of
private foundations.
Private foundations, thank you, charitable organizations. And yet, Gilead gets an extension of their patent for Truvada because this is a new indication, as they call it, a new way to use the drug.
But as a result, it's not getting into the hands of a lot of the people who need it.
Exactly, in this country. In other countries, so in Australia, for example, they have it much more cheaply. They have a generic version. They use it, and within 6 months, they were able to cut their HIV infection rate, I think, by a third.
Of course.
So this is powerful evidence that this could actually make a difference, but nobody can use it on a mass scale here because of the price.
So there's going to be this big campaign to bring the price down. There's a new group called...
There's a hashtag called Break the Patent.
Yep, hashtag Break the Patent. There's PrEP for All collaboration, they're trying to get the federal government to use its statutory authority to bring the price down. This is a public health crisis. And the health insurance companies, as it is, also, if you get PrEP, right, and maybe you get some subsidy from a copay,
they have like copay assistance programs from Gilead.
Well, then you can't count that towards your deductible and your copay. your deductible or your annual out-of-pocket maximum. So they're just making it as hard on people as possible. And folks, we got to stop this.
So the point is that this, as difficult as it is to expect any sort of positive movement out of this administration, this is something that may actually be doable. That with sufficient.
It would be doable if they were decent people, but they're not. You know, Trump made a big speech about bringing drug prices down through the private sector. That it's not going to happen. And you know, Democrats have never done anything about this either.
No, I remember it wasn't the Obama administration almost as bad as everybody else in terms of fighting for patent protections for the drugs overseas?
It's because that's where the money is.
Well, okay, so again, this is doable if we fight hard.
And in New York State, here's an announcement. They're now mandating that Medicaid managed care plans cover treatment for gender dysphoria. The plans are required to accept the treatment provider's assessment of what is necessary. Imagine that. All right, we have a lot of entertainment news, so why don't we get to it?
All right, you start with the Scotty Bowers story.
Oh, should we start?
Well, you talked about it last week.
Well, we could. Yeah, Scotty Bowers wrote a book about his experiences in Hollywood, and they've now made a documentary about it. So why don't we run that trailer?
Have you guys thought of doing something with that guy, Scotty Bowers?
Scotty was a revelation.
Scotty's a phenomenon.
Legend.
He serviced a lot of people.
That's what you call business, baby.
People are very invested in the establishment view of movie star history.
The strict moral code that we associate with Hollywood was a very traditional viewpoint. The movie stars were just good, honest, law-abiding citizens.
It turned out there was a whole alternate world to which most of us had no access or knowledge.
Scotty Bowers. He had this gas station, and he supplied men and women to the various Hollywood stars.
People disappearing up in a trailer and doing this and that. The whole thing was fun.
People wanted something, Scotty would get it.
Cole Porter would say, can you bring 15 guys, one right after the other? I fixed Katharine Hepburn up with every bit of 150 girls. I've been with Cary Grant, Rock Hudson, Charles Lawton. At Frank Sinatra's house, I had a three-way with Ava Gardner and Lana Turner.
There was a whole network of folks waiting for someone like Scotty to come along.
He wasn't simply this madam called for events.
Scotty's revealing that these people were real, flesh and blood like us.
It can add up to an awful lot of people, into the thousands.
I didn't know him then. I don't know him as that person. Not sure I want to.
I went in the Marine Corps in World War II.
Scotty was in horrific battles.
In Iwo Jima, we had 7,000 guys killed. It made me happy to be alive.
He's warm, he's caring. He likes to make people happy.
The world was different then.
If it became public that you were gay, you would be immediately fired.
They could go to jail. Scotty was able to allow these people to have lives.
Dr. Kinsey interviewed me, saying, you ever had sex with a girl? Yes. How about with a guy? Yes. Would you do everything? But somebody swears, saying, you're weird, you're different. I did the book to show that people are still people.
Don't you think you misled their trust by writing a tell-all book?
What's wrong with being gay? But thanks anyhow.
We are now embracing where the motto is do your own thing. Scotty was doing that when it was not culturally acceptable.
If it wasn't for this guy, I would have sank.
I often think back of how nice things were. I felt good that I made so many people happy.
For money. They call him a pimp, but he made arrangements for all these stars. He was famous. His first one, who showed up at the gas station, was Walter Pidgeon. Look him up. Mrs. Miniver he was in, for God's sake.
Sluts, 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 and we approve.
Well, I mean, the joy of it. If you survived Iwo Jima, you have a right to do whatever the hell you want to do.
Totally.
He was great. Okay.
All right. Well, meanwhile.
So that opens in New York and L.A. What is it? L.A. in July 27th, August 3rd in New York City. Right. Scotty and the Secret History of Hollywood.
Meanwhile, on the small screen, a while back here on the show, and I think I was actually substitute hosting that day, we found out that Batwoman in DC Comics was going to turn out to be a lesbian. And we actually had a beautiful, that's Batwoman right there. And there was a beautiful picture of her giving this full lip lock kiss to, I think that's the Gotham City police chief.
Wow.
So it turns out now that they have all these DC Comics heroes on TV on the CW channel. They have the Flash, they have the Arrow. All
Animated?
No. These are live action shows.
Okay.
And they're run by an openly gay guy. Greg Berlanti is the guy behind all of them.
Yeah.
And now it looks like they're going to do a show of Batwoman as an openly lesbian superhero. And it'll be the first live action openly gay or lesbian lead of a series, live action superhero series.
Is she bisexual if she was kissing the police chief?
No, the police chief is a
That
woman.
was a woman? Oh, well, put
police
that
chief
picture
is a
back up.
woman. Come on.
Let me take a closer look.
Beautiful artwork. So anyway,
sorry.
Hopefully that, and the woman who will likely be writing the show is a woman named Carolyn Dries, and she's a lesbian, and they are hoping to cast a lesbian actress in the role. So that should be coming out sometime in, I think, 2019.
Well, we know Scarlett Johansson is not going to do it. I mean, she is pulled out of doing that movie Rub and Tug about a transgender guy, trans man who ran a massage parlor which had happy endings. And a lot of trans actresses complained, or trans actors complained, and she said, you know, I don't want to get in the middle of this. That's fine. I'm not going to do it. Now, it gets to be this whole thing about casting stars, and it's been going on for a long time, taking these roles, and that includes gay roles as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, Pose, the Ryan Murphy throwback to the 1987 era of the ballroom scene for minority and Black and Latino folks, that's got renewed for a second season. I have yet to see it. It's on the FX channel.
We are going to have a spirited discussion about Pose on next week's show. Next week's show, we've already taped it. It's with Ann and me and 3 activists. Mustafa Sullivan from Fierce, which does youth services, Chase Strangio, who's transgender, who loves Pose from the ACLU, and Sarah Schulman, the writer. So there they are. They're all going to be on the show next week. We're just going to have this discussion about what's going on in the country today, but about sexual orientation and race and gender and all these issues. But Pose
figures prominently in the discussion
towards the second half of the show.
Well, I'm going to have to binge watch it and catch up before the second season begins. You've seen it, and Ann has seen it, I believe, haven't you? Okay.
I've seen a couple of episodes.
And?
I'm mixed on it. I mean, I really appreciate the genuineness of casting all these trans actors, which is terrific. And I love Billy Porter, who is one of the hosts of The Ballroom. You know, but it's, well, my taste in television. Anne wanted me to point out that The Young and the Restless is finally following through on the young lesbian couple that they introduced. They're in their 30s, Mariah and Tessa. They're going to get to do a lot of kissing now. They're going to get to have a relationship. It's going to be fine. Okay.
All right, I'm out of entertainment news.
Well, how about the Emmy nominations? I mean, it's an endless list, but we should note some of the LGBT people who were nominated. Among them, Sarah Paulson, Ricky Martin, that's the Gianni Versace thing, Lily Tomlin, Ellen DeGeneres, Queer Eye, Titus Burgess, RuPaul, and the cast of RuPaul's Drag Race, and lots of allies were nominated as well. Now, last week I mentioned that Zachary Quinto was going to be doing a movie about Anthony Perkins and Tab Hunter, who had just passed away, right? Well, he's producing it with J.J. Abrams, but he's not set to act in it at the moment.
Thank goodness, because when I was watching last week's show, you and Ann were beside yourselves that he was going to play one of the roles.
Not necessarily. I thought he might be able to play Tony Perkins.
Well, you guys were both like, he doesn't look anything like you.
Well, that's what Ann said, yes. Hey, you know, he's playing Harold and the Boys in the Band, which is about to close. What else? West Side Story is going to be revived on Broadway in late 2019, directed by the out gay director Ivo Van Hove. He has a way of doing minimal productions, and I don't know what he's going to do to West Side Story. It makes me nervous.
I saw the production they did, which was partly in Spanish.
Yeah, did you?
I really enjoyed it, but I'm a sucker for West Side Story.
And Spielberg is talking about, with Tony Kushner, doing a new film version of West Side Story.
Oh, I don't know about that. No.
What else do we have? The web series After Forever, which we had the creators on this show. They've been nominated for 12 2018 International Academy of Web TV Awards, including for Mitchell Anderson, Kevin Spirtus, Michael Slade, Anita Gillette, and Katie Huffman among the nominees. Now, I have a correction from last week. I'm going to try to do this. I mentioned the lesbian Belgian tennis player, Alison Van Etvenk, and she beat the last year's winner, whose name I also mispronounced, who is Garbiñe Muguruza of Spain. I hope I got that right now, but of course it was won by Angelique Kerber of Germany, who
looks like a young Frances McDormand. I just saw that.
Who beat out Serena Williams. But Serena did fabulously well since she was ranked very low going into the tournament.
And she had just birthed the baby.
And did so well. New York City has the mayor and the city council have appointed a nightlife advisory board that includes the drag artist Marty Gould Cummings. Although my friend Alan Roscoff is not happy about this commission, and he's very big promoting nightlife, so he's not happy with the things, but you know, to be continued. The documentary Love Cecil, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago, about Cecil Beaton, that is opening at the New Art in LA, July the 20th. Okay, I think we're done. Maybe we can run that other trailer.
Why not? Nicole Kidman and Russell Crowe are going to be starring in a new movie which deals with conversion therapy. So why don't we take a look at the trailer for, what is it called?
I don't have the name of it.
I had it somewhere. Well, I guess we'll find out in the trailer. Let's take a look.
Jared, I want you to do well. I want you to have a great life. I love you, but we cannot see a way that you can live under this roof if you're going to fundamentally go against the grain of our beliefs. Jared, tell me the truth, that's all.
I think about men. I don't know why. And I'm so sorry.
Your parents signed you up for a program to fix you, but Jared, you are a perfectly normal, very healthy teenage boy.
They're gonna do things for you.
You're a revelation.
You want to say your goodbyes?
Welcome to the Refuge Program.
You cannot be born a homosexual. This is a lie. It's a choice.
Go. Fake it till you make it. Become the man you are not. Save yourself.
Jared, God will not love you the way that you are.
Is this what you want? Who's gonna strike this demon down? Hit him!
It's a rocky road.
I'm having a tough time.
I'm gonna give you some advice. Tell them whatever they want to hear. Play the part, unless you really think you can change, or even want to.
What you're going through right now is just a moment.
A moment.
Yeah.
A moment.
I love God.
So that was Boy Erased. Now we know the title. Boy Erased, coming out in the fall, I believe.
And Russell Crowe was in The Sum of Us, played a gay guy himself when he was a kid. So.
Loved that movie, and he was young and cute and very, very adorable back then.
Thank you for being with us, Chris. Pleasure to have you.
My pleasure, Andy. Always a pleasure to be here. And we'll be back with you.
And the panel next week.
Exactly.
Bye-bye.
And we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.